and I am here with the fabulous Lynn Turcotte-Schuh. Hello, Lynn.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to chat with you.
Oh, I am very excited as well. So I want to tell our listeners and our watchers a little bit about you, and then we're going to get right into it because Lynn is here today to talk about connection, which is so super important when you have children. Actually, it's super important at any point. But Lynn's going to talk about connection as we're raising our kids. So Lynn is a mama first, a parenting coach, a childbirth educator, a lactation counselor, a baby sign instructor, an author, and founder of the At Home Mamas Club. So she serves mamas that are at home raising their kids, and she has a club for them. She believes that parenting is not a technique or a strategy, but a relationship that needs to be built, nurtured, and prioritized. I couldn't agree more. She's got over 10 years of experience as a marine mammal trainer. I mean, that's totally cool. So I hope we have time to talk about that, but if not, we're going to talk about it another time.
For sure.
So Lynn uses her expertise to help at-home mamas forge strong and positive relationships through small moments of connection. And this is beautiful because it seems like this great big wide open, like, how do I do it? And you break it down into these small, easy to take action on steps, which I love. When Lynn is not inside her online community, you can find her working hard on her homestead and being creatively crafty with her wife and daughter, probably listening to a 90s hip hop, I'm right there with you, or some Will Evans tracks while they work. Doesn't that sound fun? Gosh, I want to hop over there. Lynn is a strong believer in kitchen dance parties, starting every day with a fresh outlook and ending every day with lots of hugs and cuddles. I can't imagine anything better.
Agreed.
Wow. You do so much. But there's one thing we forgot in there, and you wanted to mention, I know, but you are also...
We're a homeschooling family.
Okay, so if that wasn't enough, you also homeschool, which is wonderful. And now being through this 2020, we all realize how difficult really it is to homeschool. So I am awed and amazed to have you here today, Lynn, to talk about connection.
Well, thank you. I know you read that list. I was like, oh boy, I do a lot when you put it out on paper like that.
Yeah.
But somehow we manage as moms, right? We manage to get it all, not all in the same day. But
all in the same day. You are great at multitasking.
No, I said not all in the same day, right? Like we can do all the things. We just can't do them all at the same time. That's kind of my life motto.
Well, I'm thinking back to when I had young kids. My kids are older now, but when I had young kids, and I needed all of that. So one of the reasons I started my business almost 20 years ago was I needed a lactation consultant. And so that's exactly what you do. But you know what the biggest thing was that I really needed? It was connection. It was connection to my kids and know that I was building a strong connection, and it was connection to other mamas. And I know you have a group. I think we're going to talk about your group after we go through some of these pointers that you wanted to talk about, but connection is so important. What does it mean to you to have connection, Lynn?
Connection to me means that you have an understanding of the other person's needs, wants, and emotions. I mean, that's pretty basic. And I think sometimes with our kids, we forget that they're individual, unique human beings with their own needs, wants, and emotions. We tend to just project either our own stuff or our childhood stuff onto them. So that's a lot of what I work with moms on, is just kind of getting those beliefs out. And we actually, not to get too far off topic, but a couple months ago, for an entire month, we had a challenge that we were calling Date Our Children. And not in like a creepy way, but the challenge was to set aside just like 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a week, whatever you could manage, and ask your child similar questions that you would ask someone on a date, like, what do you like to do for fun? What's your favorite food? And get to know them as a human being. So.
Isn't that a great idea? I think we're going to implement something like that here, because you do forget, like, a favorite color, or like, who do you like to watch right now with my older kids? It's like, who are you following on YouTube? Who who is
Yeah.
it that you like to listen to? And I love that. And I know one of the things you wanted to talk to us about with connection is that it doesn't always happen in these fun moments. Like, you set these like moments with your daughter, and how to create that connection. But what about the difficult times? Like, how do we create connection in those times that it's not easy?
Yeah. And to be honest, I feel like the deepest, most authentic connections are created in those really difficult moments. And the ones that are usually the hardest in our minds to think that we're making a connection are, I like to call them emotional releases, but tantrums, meltdowns, whatever you want to call it, when your kid's like laying on the floor, screaming, their face is turning blue, and you're over there like, I gave you a green cup and all this just exploded. It's hard for us to kind of get in their mindset. But in those moments when we can step out of ourselves and again connect, like be empathetic with what they're going through, that in their little life, when they expected the blue cup and they got a green one, like that was a bombshell in their little world. And just getting on the floor with them, sitting with them, comforting them, letting them know that they're not alone, letting them know that it's okay to feel what they're feeling, just kind of helping them work through those emotions. That's very hard to do. It's simple. They're simple steps, but it's hard to actually implement it sometimes. But those are the moments where when you come out of it, you're like, wow, that you just feel different. You feel that deeper emotional connection on both sides. And I think sometimes we don't even consider that when we're going through our day, when we're thinking about ways to connect with our children. We just think about the fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is so important, but so difficult, like you said. Like, in that moment that they're throwing a tantrum, when you started talking, I thought you were talking about the parent. So, okay, I've got a bit of
Right?
work to do here. So the child is throwing the tantrum, and like, give us like a really actionable step. So you said the cup idea, and get on the floor to look at, what would you say the most important thing is to do in that moment? Like, give us one thing to do to create
Yeah. Well, I actually have a 5-step framework that I built for in that moment.
Okay. Oh, I love it.
And it spells out mamas. If you can remember the word mamas, then you got the framework. So the first step is the most important, I think, and that's to manage your own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to go through the whole framework. It's a free PDF like you can find it on all my social media stuff, but managing your own emotions is probably the most important part, because we tend to have a lot of referred frustration, especially as moms. We take so much on our shoulders. So you may be having no patience with your child because of things that 4 other people did that made you frustrated in your day. But now, because they're an easy target, you're taking it out on them, right? You're losing your patience quickly on them. You're snapping at them. But it has nothing to do with them and their behavior. It's just all this other stuff that has trickled down. So just literally stopping for a second and taking a breath, counting to 10. We do a lot of like rubbing the inside of our palm with our thumb. You can do that right standing, right? Just kind of like rub it for a couple times, and it all just releases some of the tension instantly. So in that moment, just stop and get your own emotions under control so that you can interact with your child in the way they deserve to be, not with all this other referred frustration coming down. That'd be my one tip. But the other 4 steps kind of help you navigate all that stuff as well.
That's awesome. I love that you have a framework. So we'll give a link after this to the watchers and listeners so that they can actually download that free PDF of your framework. And I imagine that's what you teach inside of your club as well. Your mama's
Yeah,
club, is
we
it?
we go really deep into all of the
Mhm.
concepts, but I try to give as many resources for free as possible. But I know that the hard work is actually implementing it, and so
Mhm.
that's where the support comes in, right? So we do a lot of the keeping each other motivated and
Mhm.
knowing that it's hard but it's worth it. That's what we do in the group, is just keep each other moving forward and focus on implementing stuff.
That's great. And holding each other accountable, I'm sure, is really important within the club. Okay, so
Yes.
that is wonderful. So now we know where to go to get that framework and to figure out the steps we need to take when we're in those difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another thing you want to talk about with connection is that children will model what they see and not what you tell them. I completely agree, but tell me what you mean about this.
Yeah. So if you are saying no electronics in bed, that's your rule that you're telling them, and then you go into bed and play on your phone, they're ignoring what you just said. They're doing what you're doing, right? They're learning by your behavior. So if we want to change their behavior, step one is changing our behavior. A lot of parents will come to me at the beginning and say, how do I make my child stop doing X, Y, and Z? And my answer is, you stop doing X, Y, and Z, right? They're literally all living things learn the same way. And the best way that we learn is by modeling the people, the elders around us, whether it's an animal or a human, it's all the same. If you think of animals, because I have the animal training background,
Hmm.
if you think of like a dolphin calf out in the ocean, they have to learn how to catch fish. They do it by watching their pod, the adults in their pod. It's not like they are being given this SOP manual on how to catch a fish. Our kids are learning all of their stuff the same way. It just becomes ingrained in them, so they're going to do what we do. So if you want your child's behavior to change, you need to change your behavior first.
Gosh, that's a lot of pressure. Does that mean no Netflix at night?
So the way that we make this work is we will have the same rule, but we adjust it, we tweak it for who the person's for. So we'll say, if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, then you can, watch a show in bed. But there's no playing games in bed, there's no surfing the internet, there's no checking emails, none of this stuff. And it actually benefits us as the parents, because it's hard for me sometimes. I'm awake at 5 and I'm laying in bed and my phone's right there. I'm like, oh
Hmm.
man, I could be catching up on Instagram and checking emails and all this stuff. But then in my mind, I'm like, I'm modeling. My daughter comes in here and sees me doing this, like all bets are off. That's it. She's gonna catch me and I'm gonna be caught red-handed. And it makes me then start my day on a better note. So it actually becomes advantageous when you kind of all have the same rules. It's just hard to grasp it sometimes, wrap your head around it.
So the saying, do what I say, not what I do, is not what happens in your house. And
No,
that's not what you recommend. Okay,
it
I
doesn't
get
happen
it now.
anywhere. It really doesn't. And just as an example, because it's happening without us even knowing it, right? How many of us, and I would be willing to bet 100% of us, when we become a mom, have that moment where we're like, oh my God, I am my mother. Because we said something that she used to say to us when we were a kid, or we did something that she used to do in response to us when we were a kid. And we've never been a mom before, but our brain registered that and it filed it away. When you're a parent, this is what you do. And it just comes out, because we learn, the strongest learning connections are made by watching others of our own species, not like to bring the trainer stuff back in, but it really truly is an unconscious thing that's happening. So your kids are going to do what you do. That's just how it is.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me. And yes, I will work on the Netflix in bed at night. I will think about that.
But Netflix, but here's the thing. If that's okay with you, then, like, I'm not saying no screen time in bed. That was just an example. But if you get screen time in bed, then they get screen time in bed.
No, they do not.
Right? That's what I'm saying. It should be the same. So yeah, it is. It's hard. It's hard to grasp, but it'll change the whole dynamic.
I can see why the accountability in your group is going to be really beneficial. Okay, so I've already revealed a lot of fails in my house. Tell me about what failing means in your house. And
Yes.
I wanted to talk about that, so I really want to touch on that.
Yes, this is really important, and this is one of the things I touch upon as soon as possible when I'm working with moms, and it's because we have turned that word fail into an acronym. So the word fail in our house means first attempt in learning, and all of us have a goal of failing at least 3 times a day. So when we fail, when we make mistakes, we get excited, we high five, we celebrate it. Because if you're not failing, you're not learning, right? When you're learning new things, you make mistakes, you fail at the beginning. So if you're not failing, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're sitting stagnant. And that's just not acceptable for us in our house. But if you're trying to change your parenting, if you're not failing, you're not learning something new. You're doing it the same way. Mm-hmm. So it's so important to change your mindset and not only expect to fail, but get excited when you have those moments of failure as you're learning a new way to parent, because that means you're finally grasping it, you're finally getting it, and you're making changes and you're starting to learn this new way. So we like to just flip it on its head, and failure is a good thing. As long as you're not doing the same mistake over and over.
Then you're not learning, right?
Yes.
First attempt in learning isn't 20th attempt in learning the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So in your community, you talk about the biggest parenting fails, and what are those?
Yeah, so managing your emotions. We just talked about that. Mm-hmm. It's so hard, but if you can manage your emotions one more time than you did yesterday, like, woohoo, that's progress. We'll take it. Mm-hmm. So managing emotions is a really big one. Having unrealistic expectations is just as big, if not bigger sometimes. And I actually have an entire workshop on this, and I went through some research, and really, truly, the science says if your life meets your expectations, so if you're living what you're expecting to live, then you are happy. If your life does not meet your expectations, then you are unhappy. Like, it's just very clear cut. So I think that sometimes we have very unrealistic expectations of our children, of what they can and can't do, of what they can and can't understand. You know, to expect a 2-year-old to sit still at a restaurant for 30 minutes, like, that's not going to happen. So to then go and bring them out to eat when we're not in COVID and get frustrated that they're getting all antsy, like, that's on you. You had an unrealistic expectation of that situation. So, and it's just not with children, it's every area of your life, all relationships. So just kind of trying to set up realistic expectations based on their age, their cognitive ability, your environment, like all different factors. And when you have those realistic expectations in place, it's a whole different ballgame. That you don't have to manage your emotions as much because you don't get frustrated nearly as often. So that's number 2. And I actually am blanking on what I wrote for the 3rd one for you.
It was something about teaching versus discipline.
Oh, yes.
So,
yes. Okay.
Yeah, definitely talk about that.
There's usually like 4 or 5 points that we talk about, but I picked just 3 for today. A lot of parents will come to me and say, I need a better discipline strategy. Like, and they're saying to me, my child misbehaves, I need a better consequence or punishment system to make them not do that anymore. And I come back and say, that's not how we learn, right? So this is where my marine mammal trainer experience comes in. My brain is hardwired to think in operant conditioning. And operant conditioning has a bad rap because there's lots of experiments connected to it that are not okay. But basically, operant conditioning says that we all learn, we all make our future decisions based on our past experience. That's all it is. So we make sure that we are teaching our children so that they can learn to make better choices in the future rather than disciplining. Just a real quick example. If you told your child not to run up the stairs, and they ran up the stairs, and then you say, that's it, I'm taking your tablet away. No tablet for 2 days. That there is no connection there. That they have nothing to do with each other. There's no learning involved. There's no real consequence that they're experiencing because everything's so disjointed. I can guarantee you within a week, your kid's going to be running up the stairs again. So we take that whole framework out and we say, okay, why are they running up the stairs? Are they doing it because it's fun? Did they need to get something quickly? Was there, what was the reason for it? Help them understand that that's not safe. That's not a safe thing to do, but help them also now find an alternative choice to accomplish what they were trying to accomplish in the first place. So it's more about helping them, again, make better decisions in the future rather than just saying, that's it, you're going in timeout or you're having your TV taken away. Like those things, they don't work. They don't work because they're disjointed. There's no connection with what that behavior originally was intended to accomplish. So getting all of that out and learning how all that happens. And again, it takes longer to parent that way up front, but it saves so much time on the back end because they're not doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. You maybe once or twice, and then you don't have to deal with that again because they have learned to make better choices. Sorry, that was really long-winded.
Yeah, no, that was good. And it's something, that comes to mind here in our house is, we like to have our kids experience natural consequences a lot of the time. So, if it's the middle of winter, we're up here in Canada, so middle of winter, and you go outside without a coat on, how many times have we as parents said, put your coat on, you're going to catch a cold, you're going to be cold, you're going to be sick, like put your coat on, when really the natural consequences, they're going to get cold. Now, for younger kids, this doesn't super work. You need to get their coat on if they're younger, but my kids are teens and adults now. So you don't put your coat on, the natural consequences, you get cold, and that's a learning experience. So they're learning in that. You don't have to, give them a consequence for what they're doing because it naturally occurs. So
exactly. And we are big on natural consequences. So let me explain some of the terminology again real quick. I don't want to dive too deep, but in operant conditioning there's a cycle. So it's the ABCs of learning. So there's an antecedent, that's the technical term, which is just the whatever prompts your behavior, right? So whatever prompted you to do the thing you just did, that's called the antecedent. And then the B is behavior, so you do what you did. And then C is consequence, so it's whatever follows your behavior. And if that consequence was good, if it was favorable, you're gonna, in that same situation, the next time it comes up, when you see that same antecedent again, you're gonna do the same behavior. Because the consequence was good, it was favorable, you enjoyed it. If the consequence was not favorable, if you didn't enjoy it, you're not going to choose that same behavior next time. So that's what I mean, that based on our past experience, we make our choices. So when I say consequence, I'm just saying whatever happened after you did what you did. It doesn't mean good or bad. It's just whatever happened afterwards. So we are really big on natural consequences as well. If there's not a safety issue, that is the best teaching tool, hands down. When safety is an issue, now we have to get a little more creative, which again is where we dive a little deeper in our community. But if safety is not an issue, just let it play out. That's going to be their best teaching tool, is just letting it go how it's going to go.
But so hard. So again, another great benefit of being a part of your community and just having that, surrounded by other mamas that are saying, this is hard. And you say, I know, but you can do it, because in the long run, it's going to be so much better. So the one other thing, Lynn, that you wanted to talk about was how early does connection start?
Yeah.
And
So,
so,
oh, go ahead.
and is it ever too late? So I want to talk about two things. I know you didn't want to, that wasn't part of what we were going to talk about, but I want to talk about how early to start the connection, and is it ever too late, is the other part of it that I want to know, because I have older kids. So some of our listeners, watchers will be parents of older kids and some
Mhm.
of younger kids. So tell us when to start and when it's too late.
Yeah. So start where you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's my answer. But I when I have the opportunity to work with a family while they're pregnant, for getting them ready for childbirth stuff, I start talking to them about this stuff now, because again, one of the most difficult parts of this is mastering that first step of managing your emotions. And when you are pregnant as a mom, or I would imagine, I've not worked with families in this capacity, but I would imagine if you're going through the adoption process and you're waiting for your baby to come, like your emotions are all over the place because there's just a lot of stress. So you can start working on these tools now. And then again, just building in those small moments, those, 5 minutes a day when you're pregnant. Let's sit and I'm going to read a little book to you, and I'm just going to focus on you. And we're going to get ourselves into that habit of taking 5 minutes a day to just sit and connect. So you can start this during pregnancy. My child's only 6. However, I don't believe it is ever too late to connect. And the reason I'm saying that is because, yes, I'm a mom, but I'm also a daughter. And for a good part of my life, my mother and I were estranged. And we now have an amazing relationship. And what it took was both of us being authentic and honest and connecting and saying, hey, I didn't do a great job when you were younger. These were my failures. I'm learning. I want to learn a different way, right? So maybe as the parent, if it were me trying to connect with an older child, I would be very honest. Listen, I didn't do a great job with this when you were younger. It's one of my regrets. I'd like to change that. So can we brainstorm some ways that we can set aside some time to get to know each other, or find something that we like to do that's in common, and maybe once a week we do that together. Or if they don't even live with you anymore, then maybe once a week or once every other week you set up a little Zoom call and you're like, okay, these are the questions we're going to talk about today, and you pretend you're on the phone with one of your girlfriends, and you date your kid, right? You just get to know them. But when your child's older, we talk about this as well with a younger child, but it will look a little different with an older child. The relationship needs to go both ways. So it's mutual respect, it's mutual empathy, it's mutual compassion, right? Everything needs to be a two-way street. I always say that relationships are not 50-50, they're 100-100. You both have to give everything to make it work. And that's another benefit of starting younger, is when your child right from the beginning sees you modeling that you respect them, that you have compassion for them, that you have empathy for them, then they learn to give that to other people. So I kind of went a twisted route here, but I don't think it's ever too late. And I would start with, again, just being honest and saying, I didn't do a good job with this. I didn't really know better, but I'm getting some new tools and I'm learning. And as we go through this, I'm going to fail because I'm learning something new. So be patient with me. Tell me when I don't do what is, if I do something that makes you feel disconnected or is offensive, tell me so I can learn from it. Don't just clam up and pull away. So just kind of set the ground rules as you're starting and go from there.
And then don't take offense if you hear something that's going to be, just don't take it personally. Just know that this is going to help your relationship and grow your relationship.
Exactly.
Love that. Thanks for sharing all that with us, Lynn. One thing we did in our house just over the last few months is we put a bowl on the table with a whole bunch of questions in it. And we started using that bowl at dinner time so that we could really get to know every person around the table, because every dinner was, well, we were all home, still are.
Yes.
We're around the table, no matter what happens, through the day we come together for dinner at night and can giggle about whatever fails we had through the day, or but we started that bowl to really create that connection. And so we'd pull out a question and we'd all have to answer the question. And it was really interesting how well we got to know each other when we were asking, questions that we wouldn't normally ask them in a day-to-day conversation.
Yeah, I love that idea. And here's the thing, people think to themselves a lot, like cognitively, kids as young as 2 and 3 can be participating in exercises like that. And people think when kids are that little, like they're just kind of going about their day. But if you ask a 2 or 3-year-old, who's their best friend, or what's their favorite toy, or what's their favorite color, or what, they know, they answer, they have that information and they can share it with you. And then as they get older, obviously the questions can get more in depth, but you can do that with real young kids and set that up as a tradition in your family. Just set it up as this is one of the ways that we foster connection in our family. I love that idea.
Yeah, it really has done wonders. And I feel like the more you know about each other, the more connected you feel. So it has really been a godsend here. So okay, so let's do a recap because we talked about a lot, and I want to save enough time so that we can let parents know how to connect with you. So we talked about connecting in those difficult times, and those are the moments to connect. And we talked about your framework, which is in your club. So we'll give links after the video, and you can talk about it. Then we talked about how to model good behavior. So they're watching everything, not to put the pressure on mamas, but they're watching everything. And then also with that pressure of they're watching everything, we're going to fail too. They're going to fail, and to celebrate the fails. And in our house, we celebrate both. It's like, yes, I've failed every single day, and to look at it like a learning experience, first attempt in learning, right?
For sure. And if I could interject really quickly, because I don't think I said this, but in the moment, if you have that reaction where you didn't manage your emotions, once you calm down, go back to them. I don't care if they're 18 months old, right? Go back to them saying, well, mommy had to fail. And explain why. Explain what you did, what you wish you had done better, and use that again as a teaching moment, because you'll both learn. You'll both remember a little better. So yeah, fails. Love them. Sorry. Go ahead.
and my kids being older, will once in a while I'll hear, isn't that what you apologized for last week? Okay, forget. I am learning, okay? It's going to take me a couple go-arounds, but I'm going to fail again, and I'm going to learn it this time. So
yes.
Okay, so then we talked about the 3 biggest parenting fails that you work on in your community, and that's managing emotions, expectations, and are they realistic expectations, and teaching versus discipline. We talked about that. And then we talked about when is it the right time to start building those connections? Is it ever too early or too late? And the answer is no. It's never too early, never too late. So I love that. Okay, so Lynn, how tell us about the ways that parents can work with you.
Sure. So the main way that I support parents is through my online community. And we in there are DIY courses, like kind of blog post article type things. I do 2 group coaching calls every week just to touch base with everybody. We do a monthly roundtable, which is led by a member who is like a work at home mom. So she kind of shared her expertise. So there's a lot of support that I give as a parent coach, but there's also a lot of just support because I'm also a mom going through a pandemic. And so we support each other on that level too. So I spend a lot of time in that community. For the moms that really need one-on-one support, that need more tools, more accountability, more help just implementing, more ideas, that type of thing, I do have a one-on-one coaching program. I usually try to hold that to no more than 4 moms at a time. It's a 3-month program.
Mhm.
And right now I have 2 openings right now. But just because I do so much, I want to make sure that I'm giving my all in those moments when I'm working with them. So I cap that around 4. But the membership, the community is open all the time. So people can join that whenever they want.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you can find Lynn at parentcoach.club, but also at happymamawellness.com. Is that right?
Correct.
Any other place?
Everything's there.
We're gonna provide all the links. If you go to happymamawellness.com, you'll find all the links to the community, to that PDF. So I know you talked about the framework, the Mama's Framework. So you can get that on your website, happymamawellness.com. And then, yeah, just connect with Lynn. Like, okay, I love these reminders. And I have to tell you that I've heard this before, but I need to hear it again and again and again. And this is the value of joining a community, because even though we know it and we hear it, we don't often do it unless we have someone there to kind of not hold our hand, but hold us accountable and say, like, you can do this, and just reassure us that we're on the right track. So the value of being a part of that community would be immense. So anything I forgot, Lynn, that you want to tell our listeners, watchers about?
I think we covered it all, but I'm happy to chat about how the heck being a marine mammal trainer has anything to do with being a parent coach, either now or in a different place. But it's basically the same thing. You're just teaching a kid rather than a 2,000-pound sea lion.
We should do a whole nother chat about that. So let's do that. I hear my dogs barking now, and I don't want to, I know we've reached our max of what they can take.
Yeah, no worries.
But I want you to come back and tell us about this another time if you would. All right.
I'd be happy to.
Thanks so much for being here, Lynn.